Hello and welcome to Ruminating Reverends. This is the first episode. Welcome to the two reverends that are seemingly ruminating. In front of me is Ron Iveson, the rector of Christchurch, and Graeme Lamb, who is the vice rector of Christchurch. And would you like to introduce yourselves? You know,
he's Graeme. He's the rector of Vice, and I'm Ron. I'm just the one who rectors it all.
And Graeme?
Don't want to say much more than that.
Well, yeah.
Technically, I'm the curate as opposed to the vice rector.
Yeah.
But I like vice rector. That should go on the board outside.
Okay.
To start off with, then, just to get to know them a little bit more, I've got a few quickfire questions. Okay. So, as an example, tea or coffee, Ron?
Depends on the day. Now tea.
Graeme?
Always coffee. Always.
I think tea wins there, I've got to say. I think tea does win. Seeing as the region we're in, I think it's very important to ask whether you're a red or a blue.
Blue.
Ron?
Red.
Good choice.
Red. Yeah.
Next one is mild or spicy?
It depends.
Mild for me.
I was going to say mild, spicy, not too spicy, not too mild. Yeah. I'm just middle of the road, bland.
Just bland.
Yeah, bland, Ron.
If it's chilies
do you ask for bland curry?
Yes. Yeah, can I have a bland curry,
if it's chilies
please?
on a jar telling me how spicy the sauce is, I want 2 out of 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's me. That's still spicy.
I'm still 1 chili out of 5.
Just a little bit.
I'm still 1. Sweet or savoury?
Sweet. No question.
Sweet.
Yeah, I got to agree there. Morning or night?
For what?
Just general activity.
Morning person.
Yeah, very much so. I can get much more done in the morning.
I prefer nights.
Yeah.
I do prefer nights.
Because you're a teenager.
Very true.
It's nocturnal.
Fiction or non-fiction?
Non-fiction.
Fiction.
What series of books?
So many series. I just really enjoy reading stories. Short stories, actually, I'd say. My favourite read tends to be short stories.
Headphones or speakers next?
Ooh.
Headphones, I'd say. I use speakers more often, but actually headphones quite often at my desk. You can get the detail more.
I think now the headphones I've become young and trendy.
Something like that. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Android.
I'm an Android person. Samsung.
Are we advertising now?
Other brands are
Other
available.
brands are available. Yeah.
Dogs or cats?
Oh, dogs.
This is one for you, Ron. Rather dog? You'd rather your 3 cats were...
I've still got 3 cats, but yeah, I prefer dogs.
I love both, but I prefer dogs.
Text or call?
Oh, text.
Oh, call. People get really annoyed with me because I want to ring them.
This is me.
And I don't like typing lots of... And I do voice notes now, but somebody taught me how to do voice notes.
Yeah, voice notes, because we do voice notes sometimes, don't we? And they're quite a good middle ground.
Yeah. Unless you're on the receiving end of a 2-minute one.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Right, in that case, I'm going to hand it over to you two. Today's subject is all about, what is faith? Why is faith important? And bits like that. So I'm going to hand over to you two.
Well, we're talking about faith, but we haven't talked about you, Ollie. You've introduced us. So this is Ollie, and he's set up all the equipment to start this and making it work for us. So thank you, Ollie.
Thank you, Ollie. Yeah.
Yeah. So faith. Well, I was thinking about this, but, which is a perennial thing, isn't it, in terms of... That means it happens every year. Everyone is thinking about faith all the time. We get accused of being lunatics for having faith, but everybody has faith in something, like whether you're red or blue, or those kind of things. And as we can see in our world and political climate, there's lots of things about where do you invest faith in terms of people and trust and those kind of things.
Yeah, you picked up a key word I was thinking of there, because is faith about belief or is it about trust? And I tend to think of it more in, just in terms of how I think of it myself, is almost a belief comes first and then the trust comes second, but that's me. For other people, it might be the other way around,
Yeah.
depending on sort of where they are within the situation.
I think, go on.
But it's more than just believing in something.
Yeah, it's not just a kind of intellectual bare response to something. But it's hard to say, yeah, which comes first in kind of order. They both tend to be simultaneous, don't they? So if you walk into a room,
Yeah.
I often say to people, you haven't tested what you've sat on. We don't do that by nature. We just see there's a chair and we trust that it's there. So we believe there's a chair there and it's reliable and not going to fall apart. And we trust it, and we do that with absolutely everything in life. Otherwise, we'd never move out of our rooms.
The question then is why, isn't it? I mean, that's partially because that's based on our past experience.
Yeah.
That chairs have generally held us up.
Exactly.
So there's trust that the chair is going to do the job. The sofa that we're sat on now, the trust that it's going to do the job. We believe that it functions as a sofa. We trust that it will. We have faith in the sofa.
We do. Faith in the duvet and the sofa. But that's based on the authority.
Yeah.
Because some adult, when we were tiny, taught us that chairs were okay to sit on. And then our experience validated that trust. And that teaching, that experience, the experience taught it. And I often think that, in church, we're accused of being authoritarian or telling people what to believe and all that kind of nonsense. We're exposing questions and helping people to think through the issues for themselves in light of the Christian understanding of life, the Christian revelation, and to make those connections for themselves, or not, as the case may be, depending on where they're at and what their choice is. And all faith is based initially on testimony. You have to be told something.
In order to have faith.
In order to have faith or trust.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not often directly from observation and experience off our own bat. We are told, go and do this. Go to Alton Towers, you'll have a great day. Well, why should I go to Alton Towers? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm thinking about in terms of this is faith is really normal. It's a normal part of everyday life, every sector of society. Scientists have to have faith. Yeah. They have to have faith, as you're talking about there, the chair. The world is ordered in such a way that chairs don't just suddenly decompose at a random, purpose, at a random point. Yeah. So when a scientist comes to measure anything or do an experiment and want it to be repeatable, and that's about expectation, they're believing in an ordered universe that is hinged together in a particular way, as making up a phrase, that they can trust in implicitly. Now, they can't measure that. They can't show that that's the case by stepping outside of it, because they're inside of it.
And that's one of the complexities of faith generally, isn't it? It's trying to measure something which is immeasurable by simple scientific standards. And I don't mean science is simple. Yeah. Science certainly isn't. But there isn't any easy way of measuring, well, you have faith, you don't, you have this amount of faith.
Yeah.
There are some ways of showing it.
Yeah.
You can act in ways that show it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially in ways of trust.
Which brings us on to something else about, I guess, the criticism often Christians get is, you're not living in accordance with your faith. The old one, look at you, you're not being a good Christian. And so there's a kind of general understanding of authenticity in any kind of faith, isn't it? That you act it out in a particular way to show what your heart belief is.
Yeah, well, that always brings me back to something which always comes back to me, which is, sometimes gets misinterpreted when I say it and people look at me funny. Christianity isn't a moral religion, it's a relational religion.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't mean there isn't a moral aspect to it. But if Christianity was a moral religion, we'd never succeed. Because of sin, we'd never succeed. But faith helps us with the relational side of things. And that's sort of trust in the character of God and the direction in which we are going, which I think is an awful large part of what faith is what direction are we going in?
Yeah.
And that's sort of direction towards God and trusting in the character of God and the promises of God that he's going to be there with us throughout.
So then it is a moral religion. But it's God's morals. It's God's character
Yes.
we're trusting in.
Yes.
It's not that we have to achieve that to get
Yeah,
into it.
Yeah.
But I think there's something else in that. All faith, in some ways, entails hope. You're saying that
Absolutely.
it's a journey
Absolutely.
towards
Yeah, yeah,
something. And whether you're a scientist doing experiments, or you're baking a cake, or you're bringing up a child, or you're going on a trip, you have a hope that you will have a destination, a goal, a purpose, some sense of meaning. So in the notion of faith are all these other things which are really important to us, aren't they?
Which is why it's useful to start off talking about it.
Yeah.
Because it feeds into and feeds out of and feeds through so many other things, like hope. You know, we could talk about the words of Advent, peace and joy. You know, all these things fit together, don't
Yeah, they do.
It's all these different aspects, and the idea that faith is, again, with hope, that you're hoping that something is going to happen. You're hoping that something is going to be there at the end. You're moving towards something again. There's a momentum to faith.
Yeah. I think that's really important, actually. It's not static.
Yeah.
So our faith can change because of life, how we've been buffeted in life, our own sin, brokenness, the world, and we can have weak faith and stronger faith at various points. But it can change. It's always reshaping, and it can be deepening and broadening, can't it, in that kind of way, and
Yeah.
maturing in a particular way.
Yeah, in the sense that it's almost a dynamic action, as opposed to, as you say, it's not static. It's not a static emotion.
Yeah.
There's a dynamism to it because of that relational aspect.
Which brings us to, I guess, we're not going to talk about church per se today, but the community aspect. It's relational. It's not just a vertical relation; it's a horizontal one. So, and we are the community of faith. In that sense, that's one of the words for the church, isn't it? So we are there, people on a journey, encouraging one another.
Yeah, it's that concept of belonging to a faith community.
Yeah.
And every single one of those words, belonging, faith community, you could unpack that. Faith we already are, but you could unpack so much in relation to that. So we've probably, without realising, we've probably mostly talked about personal faith. But there is that community faith. What does it mean as a group of Christians to have faith together?
Yeah.
As opposed to just having faith on our own. And how does that challenge people who say, oh, they don't need to go to church to be a Christian?
I was just thinking that one.
Yeah.
And I always say, you wouldn't pretend to be on a football team if you didn't pitch up. It's belonging and involving in the relational sense as you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's always about community, but also about identity. In that, and we were just I was saying earlier about the politics thing, and where the Western world is at the moment, particularly, is like, who do you trust, and what is our national identity, and all those kind of things. What do we have faith in that makes us who we are as a people, with borders or not? And that's a huge question at the moment.
Well, there's lots of things. I mean, you could argue that goes back decades or centuries, depending what point you want to make, really. But I talk a lot about the general decline in institutional trust since 1960s, probably.
Yeah.
With postmodernism, which goes back to that very thing that people generally have less faith in institutions now than they used to, politicians, church, whatever, from that point of view. So what do people have faith in?
They'll often say they have faith in themselves, but even that's quite fragile these days.
And sometimes that can be a response to the distrust or lack of faith in other elements.
Yeah. I think that fragmentation in society.
Yeah.
But also a lack of commitment. So faith often had a commitment to it. And people don't like commitment anymore in the structural sense. All groups are dropping out of society, aren't they? Whichever kind of group, the numbers are quite often going down. So the commitment sense of faith is a bit, I think, that scares people, particularly about coming to church. You still get, I'm unworthy for this. I am not good enough. I don't have enough faith. I'm not the right kind of person. And all these things have been said to me kind of recently by newish people. And you just think, that's baloney, just turn up. but we're on the inside. So it's that perception of what they see.
I think in terms of the normal person who might be listening to this and thinking this doesn't appeal to me, how can that Christian faith, I know we're not talking about the church, but specifically let's focus on Morton because that's where we are. That's the effect that we can see. Without coming to faith, how can faith affect a local community in that sort of sense? How can it spread to other people? So Morton in Bloom, we support Morton in Bloom here with the lights. Is that a showing of having faith to allow that to spread to the local community?
That's a really interesting question, actually. Yes, I want to say, but that's a really tough question, that, Ollie. Thank you. I think where I want to go with that is, I don't know, faith is contagious. I'm struggling to find words beyond that, just in terms of saying it. But you talk about Morton in Bloom, so just in terms of doing good for the community, that's contagious. I think you can, and contagious in a good way, by the way. I hope that's clear. And people see good being done. People see, again, progress moving forward, things happening, and people want to be part of that. There is probably still a question of how committed people want to be that, and obviously Morton in Bloom has seen that it has a lot of great volunteers, and that seems to be growing all the time.
I think that touches on something, the ordinariness of faith. So Morton in Bloom came about with the idea of just one or two people saying, let's make this place better in some way or other. How it looks, flowers, visual, tidy-ups. And then that grew because people got on board with the vision, the goal, the hope, and then gave the commitment. And I know there's there's a largish number of people who are deeply committed to Morton in Bloom as a regular thing, as a mainstay in their weekly activity. So, yes, that is a natural and ordinary expression of what faith means. In terms of what Christian faith means into that, all those things we would say are part of what God has given us to be in the world as human beings. So being a Christian isn't about being non-human or somehow super spiritually strange. It's actually just to be a fully rounded human being. That's what we're growing into. In light of the image of God, in light of who Jesus is. That's the specific bit for Christians. So the God who made the world and remakes the world, that we trust in and follow, we are constantly in the process of making and creating and being part of his remaking the world for good, through people coming to faith and knowing him, and then the outflow of the fruit of that in daily life. So there's a bit in the Bible of the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now they are, if you like, human qualities, but in the context of that letter, they're spiritual qualities because they're focused in a particular way on Jesus and his Spirit in us. So the church is supposed to be or Christians, a light in the world that others may see and glorify God by creating goodness in the world. I think we are partakers of God's nature, but also we've been called to be co-heirs with Christ and work in the world that he's put in the way that he wants. So it expands, faith expands your vision, it expands this whole thing. It's not about me and my soul. It's about us in this world, in this whole creation, actually, in what God is doing. And people get, as you say, caught up in that.
That's a huge part of faith, that idea of the co-heirs with Christ. Faith is trusting in the character of Christ and trusting that following Christ is the right thing to do. And so that shared partnership together.
I think another thing, because I'm trying to keep the viewpoint of the ordinary person that doesn't go to church, isn't Christian. What does faith look like? Because we have I've been to an event called MCYC, which
Yeah.
is a local event around here, where you go for a week and you go and explore what it means to follow Jesus and that sort of thing. So, and that can be a visual of faith. So, to the normal person, what does faith look like?
It partly depends on their expectations. They may think they're being really horrible. Oh, faith just looks like being stuffy, religious, uptight and judgmental. And those are some of the things that, you know, people will put on the church or be fearful of. But faith is supposed to be about having life in all its fullness. And that can be anything. You can do it with listening to someone at a really deep level. So Jesus said to, no, John the Baptist said to Roman soldiers, go the extra mile. Do extra things for people. Jesus said, forgive 70 times 7. So there's something that goes beyond the norm. I was listening to something this week about, I've forgotten his name now, John Lennox, scientist, and he was talking about someone whose testimony he heard. Now, this is a Christian scientist who's worked at Oxford, and he's a really devout Christian, and he was talking about someone who was training to be an electrician and got sacked from the job for working too slowly. And the reason he was working too slowly was because he said, he was only a young lad, he said he spent so much time working under the floorboards to make sure they're absolutely right so there wouldn't be any problem, as in a fire in hidden areas and those kind of things. And the boss said to him, well, no one sees that bit. And he said, my God does. That's the difference. And so that young lad, who's probably now a man, was really trustworthy because he knew that he was working for the glory of God in the ordinariness, in cabling. That's the difference. The Puritans said that the Christian should be the best baker and butcher and farmer and whatever else. You're working for the glory of God in all you do. Paul writes, whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. And that's a motivation. So it should look different. It might not be different. You might be a taxi driver, but you do it in a particular way. There's a quality to it that is expressive of where your faith, where your heart lies. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I think it comes out in different ways. I used to find when I was still, seems strange to say when I was still working in teaching, it wasn't that long ago, that quite often it used to, on a day-to-day basis in the workplace, it basically just used to come out in my response to actions and events. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about that. But, you know, in particular to having ethical responses to perhaps potentially unethical situations, for example. But it wasn't me who was pointing out that, oh yeah, here's me being a Christian, living my faith. It was actually my colleagues who'd sometimes say. They didn't like it, to be honest, sometimes. But faith can be just very, very simple actions. Very, very, very simple words. But, you know, doing the very best you can.
And sometimes it can rub people up the wrong way just by doing the best.
Yeah.
Because it shows them up.
It challenges them.
Yeah. I've had that in a secular environment to me before I was ordained. And I think other Christians have come across that in parts of the world. One thing I want to say is when we talk about faith, and this is probably the thing that people think about straight away, is faith and fact. And faith does not mean, I think we've got to this point by saying that it's not opposed to facts. Faith is an attitude that you have of trust and character development based on facts. So I have a really good friend, and he is a really good friend, but he pretends to be an atheist, and he's always having a jab at me. I won't mention his name. And he says, oh, you believe in this man in the sky? And I say, yes, I believe the intelligence in the sky. Do you believe in unintelligence? And I won't tell you what his response is to that, but it's dealing with those issues that we believe in an ordered, intelligent universe that's made in this particular way. that has reliable facts about the essence of what it means to be a Christian based on who Jesus is, lived, died and rose again, and what proof means and all those things. But faith is your investment in those, it's your trust in those.
Yeah.
And that should shape us into being the best we can be. Jonathan Edwards, not the athlete, was a 17th century revivalist preacher and late Puritan. And he wrote a pile of resolutions, and one of them, which is slightly bonkers, well, some of them were, was, if there is a single best, this is my paraphrase, single best, most excellent Christian in the world, that shall be me. And that was his goal. Now, that could be arrogant, but he worked out that there's got to be someone somewhere who is the very best at this. And why shouldn't it be me?
Mm.
And actually, I think that's a really good goal. It can break you if you're doing it in the wrong way. But be the best you can be as a human being. I think is for the glory of God.
Yeah, and faith is trying to live that out, isn't it?
Yeah, faith is living that out.
Or always, when you say working out your faith, working out your trust in God.
Yeah.
Working out your belief, working out your growth as you go through life.
But you don't measure it against other people.
Yeah.
That's really important, I think.
And that's where people really struggle with in
Yeah.
churches, when they do measure it against other people and they look at somebody else and go, oh, they look like they have more faith than I do. It's
Yeah.
not that simple, measurable, quantifiable thing.
Yeah. And it's actually sometimes, just to come back to your question, it's something that other people see in us before we might see it in ourselves.
Yeah.
The change and the growth. They go, oh, wow, you've changed.
And that's what I say, that is one of the measurable signs of faith, is when you see it in other people.
Just a last sort of question, sort of from a viewpoint of a normal person. What would you say to someone that says, oh, I can't have faith and come to church? Because that's not showing faith. It's not having faith in God by answering the call to go to church. What would you say to someone who doesn't want to go to church, can stay at home, but wants to have that faith and that connection?
Get out of bed.
Yeah.
Do you want to? I've talked, but I can...
Going back to what I said before, really, faith works at its best within a community. Your faith can be worked out, your faith can grow, your faith can improve, if we can say such a thing as improve, best within a community as people work together, as people learn together, as people grow together. I know that sounds very twee in some ways, but it's true. Fundamentally.
Something I always say is, you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. But if you're a true Christian, you'll want to go to church. There's something about it that makes that connection. And that's the bit about, it's not forced up here in your head, it's from the heart. And whether it's a football team, going to the pub, going to a club, going to be with your friends, doing whatever else, going for a day out, you gather and you want to do it. And at some point that will happen.
And it's it's that relational element again.
Yeah.
To be in relation with other people.
But people are at various stages. And sometimes people don't come to church because they don't feel worthy enough, which is a completely different issue in and of itself, and that needs encouragement and support. One of my lads said to me when he was young, when he was at the age where we'd agreed he could stay at home, do I have to come to church? And I said no. And it went the next week, do I have to come to church? And I said no, and there was a whole dialogue about that at home. And he did it again the third week. I don't know why he did it for 3 times, but anyway, the magical 3 number. And I said to him, it's like this. If you are a Christian, you'll come to church, it's just what you do. If you can tell me you're not and you don't believe any of this, don't bother. He never stopped coming to church for the rest of his teens. And that was on himself. I didn't force him, but I just said, that's the way it is. This is what we do. It's who we are. And it's actually joyful at its root.
Yeah. So I think that's where we'll leave it for this episode anyway. thank you for agreeing to join me.
Thank you.
Or thank you, Graeme, for agreeing to join me and Ron.
He'll be back next time.
Yeah, we'll be back next time. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.